6, 5,
4, 3.
We have ignition
2,
of the main engines.
1, 0.
We have liftoff. Liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy rocket carrying the NROL-49 mission for the National Reconnaissance Office. This marks the first West Coast Delta IV Heavy launch.
Okay, we're going to pick up post lift securing, net 15.
Recovering nicely from the initial launch transients. 40 seconds in. Standing by for the partial thrust command to go to the core booster.
And you are hearing the voice of Steve Agate, and he's providing launch vehicle ascent data.
As we're passing 1 minute and 4 seconds into the flight. Good engine control. Coming up 1 minute 19 seconds. Mark, 1 minute 19 seconds. Now at max Q, maximum dynamic pressure. Now at 1 minute 24 seconds. Mach 1. Vehicle now going transonic. Passing 1 minute 32 seconds. Altitude now is 7.8 nautical miles. Velocity 1,677 feet per second. Downrange distance continues to look good. 1 minute 42 seconds in. Chamber pressures continuing to look good, holding very well in the port and starboard boosters in the full thrust mode, and in the core, a good core chamber pressure level in the partial thrust mode. Mission events are occurring very, very close to the expected time. Hydrazine system pressurization has now begun on the second stage, passing 2 minutes, 10 seconds in. Engine steering very, very good. Very little movement. Coming up on 2 minutes, 25 seconds. Mark, 2 minutes, 25 seconds. Altitude now passing 20 nautical miles. Velocity 3,233 feet per second. Coming up on 2:43. Mark, 2 minutes, 43 seconds. The Delta IV vehicle now only weighs 1/2 of what it did at launch about 2 minutes, 50 seconds ago, as we're expelling propellant at the rate of 4,700 pounds per second. Coming up on 3 minutes into the flight. Mark, 3 minutes in, still looking good. Chamber pressures continuing to hold rock solid on the port and starboard boosters in the full thrust mode, and a good partial thrust reading in the core booster. Engine control continues to look good. Very little movement. Coming up on 3 minutes, 20 seconds. Mark. We have about 1/2 minute before the port and starboard boosters get toggled down to their partial thrust levels. 20 seconds until that event. Altitude now passing 45 nautical miles, velocity 8,600 feet per second. Standing by for the partial thrust command. And we have the partial thrust command. Chamber pressure is now beginning to drop in the port and starboard boosters, leveling out. All 3 boosters now in the partial thrust mode. And we have MECO in the port and starboard boosters, and separation. Core booster now has powered up into the full power mode again.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3. We have ignition of the RS-68 engines. 2, 1, 0. We have liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy rocket carrying the NROL-49 mission for the National Reconnaissance Office. You are hearing the voice of Steve Agate providing launch vehicle ascent data.
128 feet per second, downrange distance about 1/10 of a nautical mile.
MEQ, perform post-liftoff
Command
securing.
to go to the partial thrust mode.
Roger.
Passing 1 minute. Chamber pressure is holding, as we expect. 1 minute, 15 seconds into the flight. Passing 1 minute, 20 seconds. Max Q, maximum dynamic pressure in the vehicle. Now 1 minute, 25 seconds. Mach 1 vehicle now going transonic. Passing the 1 minute, 30 second mark. Altitude now passing 7 nautical miles. Velocity 1,645 feet per second. Downrange
LC,
distance
this is RC on
1.26 nautical miles.
Go RC.
Roger, I have first motion time.
Roger.
Roger, we have first motion time of 18:03:00.00.224.
Chamber pressure holding nicely in all
Decimal
3 boosters.
224. Copy.
Good
Full
go.
thrust mode in port and starboard booster. Partial thrust mode in the core.
LC, MEQ.
Go MEQ.
Post liftoff securing complete.
Roger.
Coming up on 2 minutes. Mark, 2 minutes into the flight. Altitude now passing 13.5 nautical miles. Velocity 2,224 feet per second. Downrange distance 5.9 nautical miles. Two minutes, 15 seconds in.
This is the MD on Countdown Net
Looking
1.
good.
Today's launch is dedicated to the brave men and women who serve for our nation's freedom. MD out.
2 minutes, 30 seconds. Chamber pressure holding very well in all 3 boosters. Full thrust in the port and starboard, partial thrust in the core. 2 minutes, 43 seconds in. The Delta vehicle now only weighs 1/2 of what it did at launch some 2 minutes, 48 seconds ago. We're expelling propellant at the rate of 4,745 pounds per second. Coming up on 2 minutes, 55 seconds. Altitude now passing 28.1 nautical miles. Velocity 5,041 feet per second. Downrange distance 34 nautical miles. About 45 seconds remain in 3 booster flight. Passing 3 minutes, 15 seconds. Coming up on 3 minutes, 30 seconds in. Still looking good. Chamber pressure holding in all 3 boosters. Port and starboard boosters continue in the full thrust mode and core booster in partial thrust. 3 minutes, 40 seconds in. About 15 seconds remain until we go to the partial thrust mode. Standing by. And we're going to the partial thrust mode in all 3 boosters now. Standing by for MECO, the main engine cutoff, on the port and starboard, and for separation. We've had separation of the port and starboard boosters from the core.
FISBO, LC.
Core booster has ramped up to full thrust
net
mode.
1.
FISBO on 1.
Operation 70, step 70,
Will
perform
remain in
OSM
the full
console
thrust
securing.
mode
Establish
in the
launch
core
vehicle
booster
disable.
until shortly before main engine cutoff, about 1 minute from now.
We should have ignition. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy rocket with NROL-71 for the National Reconnaissance Office.
Vehicles beginning the pitch over maneuver.
You are hearing the voice of Patrick Moore providing launch vehicle ascent data.
Now 20 seconds into flight, seeing good chamber pressure across all 3 R68A engines. Now 30 seconds into flight. And core boosters beginning to throttle down to the partial thrust mode as expected. Core boosters reach partial thrust. Now 46 seconds into flight. Chamber pressures continue to look good across all three R68 engines. Core booster in partial thrust mode. Port and starboard boosters in the full thrust mode. Now coming up on 1 minute into flight. Now passing 1 minute, 10 seconds. All three RS-68A engines continue to look good. Vehicle is now passing max Q, maximum dynamic pressure. And vehicle is now past Mach 1. Delta 4 is now supersonic. Now 1 minute, 30 seconds into flight. Chamber pressures on all three RS-68A engines continue to look good. Core booster in the partial thrust mode. Port and starboard boosters in the full thrust mode. 1 minute, 40 seconds in. Launch vehicle is now 12 miles in altitude, traveling at almost 1,600 miles per hour. Chamber pressures on all three engines continue to look good, coming up on 2 minutes into flight. Second stage attitude control system press valve has been opened. System now pressurizing the flight levels. Response looks good. Now 2 minutes, 10 seconds in. Chamber pressures on all three engines continue to look good. Vehicle's now gone to closed loop guidance. Vehicle body rates look good. Now 2 minutes, 30 seconds in. Just over 3 minutes now remaining in the boost phase of flight. Engine operating parameters continue to look good. Now passing 2 minutes, 42 seconds in. The Delta IV rocket now weighs just 1/2 of what it did at launch, burning propellant at a rate of almost 5,000 pounds per second. 2 minutes, 55 seconds in. Vehicle body rates continue to look good. Now at 3 minutes, vehicle is now passing Mach 5. About 20 seconds remaining, and I'm sorry, 30, correction. Vehicle body rates continue to look good. Chamber pressures on the RS-68A engines continue to look good. Now coming up on 3 minutes, 20 seconds into flight. Just over 30 seconds now remaining until strap-on booster engine cutoff. 3 minutes, 30 seconds in, just over 2 minutes remaining in the boost phase of flight. Vehicle is now passing Mach 10. Chamber pressures on the RS-68A engines continue to look good. And port and starboard booster engines now throttling down to partial thrust in preparation for cutoff as expected. And we have cutoff of the strap-on engines, standing by for separation. And we have good indication of separation of the port and starboard strap-on booster. Core booster is now throttled back up to the full thrust mode. Engine response looks good. 4 minutes, 10 seconds into flight. Chamber pressure on the core booster in the full thrust mode looks good.
7, 6, 5, 4, 2, 1, and liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy rocket carrying the NROL-82 mission for the National Reconnaissance Office.
You go on the pitch over maneuver. The parameters look good on all three cores. Core booster is now throttling down to the partial thrust level. Partial thrust achieved.
You are hearing the voice of Rob Kesselman providing launch vehicle ascent data.
Now 50 seconds into flight, vehicle is 3 miles in altitude, 5 miles downrange distance, traveling at 970 miles per hour. All vehicle systems look good at this time. Now at T plus 80 seconds, vehicle is now passing through Max Q, maximum dynamic pressure. Mach 1, vehicle is now supersonic. All three RS-68 looks healthy at this time. Vehicle systems continue to be healthy. The second stage reaction control system pressurization valve has now opened. Now 125 seconds into flight, Delta is now 18 miles in altitude, 9 miles downrange distance, traveling at 1,800 miles per hour. Delta has now gone to closed loop guidance. Vehicle body rates are nominal. Three minutes remain in the booster phase of flight. Delta IV rocket now weighs just 1/2 of what it did at liftoff, burning propellant at a rate of almost 5,000 pounds per second. One minute until port and starboard booster engine cutoff. Vehicle systems look healthy at this time. The attitude control system, the autopilot has controlled all vehicle body rates to near zero. Approximately 30 seconds remaining now until the port and starboard booster engines cut off. Strap-on boosters are now throttling down to the partial thrust level. Strap-on booster cutoff and separation of the strap-on boosters. Core booster is now throttling back up. Core booster is operating as expected at the 100% throttle level.
To mitigate the fireball created by the hydrogen-burning Delta IV Heavy rocket, the staggered engine start sequence begins with ignition of the launch table HPOs, burning off the excess hydrogen injected into the flame duct. Next, the starboard Delta IV ROFI lights, igniting its RS-68A engine. Then, the center and port RS-68A engines ignite to generate more than 2.1 million pounds of total thrust to lift the 1.6 million pound triple-core rocket off the pad. Shortly after liftoff, Delta begins a pitchover to attain the proper flight path, while minimizing the pressure the vehicle experiences during flight. 81 seconds into flight, the Delta IV reaches Mach 1, the speed of sound. With propellant depleted in the port and starboard boosters, the engines shut down and the boosters are jettisoned to shed their weight. The remaining booster engine then throttles to full power to maximize performance against gravity losses. Once propellant levels deplete in the center booster, the engine shuts down. The Delta IV separation system then activates to release the first stage. The vehicle now weighs approximately 7% of what it did at liftoff. Then, the Delta Cryogenic Second Stage, or DCSS, main engine ignites. During ascent, NROL-91 is protected inside a 5-meter diameter payload fairing. After traveling through the densest part of Earth's atmosphere, the payload fairing is jettisoned. The Delta IV Cryogenic Second Stage will carry the payload to its final orbital destination, where it will begin its national security mission.